Okay, so good morning class. So we are now in chapter 4, internal analysis, which includes resources, capabilities, and activities. So in this chapter, we will look at the internal analysis, looking inside the firm for core competencies, and we will discuss yung internal factor evaluation matrix, and then putting together internal and external analysis, yung SWOT analysis na natin. Okay, pero with this lecture video, we will just tackle about the internal analysis as a whole, and then we will look at the internal factor evaluation matrix. Okay, so this is the internal analysis. We will use this figure. If you can remember, medyo familiar na to kasi we also look at this when we made the external analysis, yung PESTEL. So, ito yung nasa labas niya, yung economic, socio-cultural, technological, ecological, legal, and political. Now, we will focus on this inside the firm, which includes the resources, capabilities, core competencies, and firm activities, and the strategy. Okay, so in order for a firm kasi to formulate and implement a strategy that enhances its chances of gaining and sustaining competitive advantage, the firm must have certain types of resources and capabilities that combine to form core competencies. Okay, so the goal is to develop resources na yung mga available sa firm natin, capabilities and competencies that create strategic activities with the firm's given the firm's environment. Okay, strategic fit. So, ano ba yung sinasabi nating core competency? So, core competency are the unique strengths embedded deep within the firm that allow it to differentiate its products and services from those na competitors niya or rivals niya, which creates higher value for the customers or for its products na being offered and services comparable value at lower cost. Okay? So, competitive advantage can be brought about by core competencies. So, core competencies must be continuously nourished, upgraded, and improved to maintain the firm's competitiveness. Okay, ano ba yung sinasabi kasi natin na competitive advantage? So, it refers to the factors that allow a company to produce goods or services better or more cheaply than its rivals. Okay, so this allows the firm to generate more sales or superior margins compared to its rivals. So, yun yung gusto nating ma-achieve. So, with given our core competencies, we need to achieve competitive advantage. Okay? So, how do we link yung resources, capabilities, core competencies natin, and activities to competitive advantage and superior performance? So, meron tayo ditong diagram. Okay, so yung core competencies natin are built through the interplay of resources and capabilities. What are yung resources natin na sinasabi? So, resources can be assets such as buildings or intellectual property that company can draw on when crafting and executing strategies. This can be tangible or intangible resources. So, later on, makikita natin yung difference ni tangible or different example ni tangible and intangible assets. What about capabilities? So, capabilities are the organizational and managerial skills necessary to orchestrate a diverse set of resources and to deploy them strategically. So, yung capabilities natin are intangible by nature. Resources can be tangible or intangible, while capabilities are intangible in nature. Okay, so yung resources natin reinforce core competencies while capabilities allow managers to orchestrate their core competencies. With this, yung core competencies natin, we will come up with strategies and firm activities na which can lead to competitive advantage. Okay, so strategic choice na natin which is reflected in our firm activities, so can leverage core competencies for competitive advantage. So, of course, when we attain yung competitive advantage na which allow us to be superior to other firms, then we will can maintain or sustain yung superior performance. Pero bakit nagkakaroon ng arrow back to resources and capabilities if we have yung superior performance? So the arrows leading back from performance to resources and capabilities indicate that superior performance in the marketplace generates profits that can be reinvested, of course, into the firm to further upgrade its resources and capabilities. Okay? So, this is ito yung relationship or yung um, figure na nagpapakita ng relationship ng resources, core competencies, capabilities, and kung how this lead to competitive advantage and superior performance. Okay? So, ito yung example of the tangible and intangible assets. So, of course, yung tangible natin are physical assets. Okay? So, this can be visible. So, example, capital, land, buildings, plant, equipment, supplies, while intangible assets are those with no physical attributes or invisible. So, culture, knowledge, brand equity, reputation, intellectual property like patents, copyrights, trademarks, and trade secrets. So, competitive advantage is more likely to spring from intangible assets. Kasi etong tangible assets, madali lang siyang gayahin ng competitors mo. Unlike sa intangible assets. Okay? Lalo na itong mga patents, copyrights, ito yung nakakapag contribute dun sa pagiging unique nung firm mo or pag-attain ng competitive advantage kasi kung meron kang patents, copyrights, and trademarks, mahihirapan siyang kopyahin talaga ng other competitors mo or ng rival firms mo. Okay? So, we have two critical assumptions of the resource-based model. So, we have resource heterogeneity and resource immobility. So, when we say resource heterogeneity, bundles of resources and capabilities differ across firms. So, even though yung firms natin, the same industry sila, there is also difference in the resources use. Okay? So, yung resources or bundles of resources of firms competing in the same industry are unique to some extent and thus differ from one another. Kaya doon din sila, parang doon sila nagdi-differ talaga. Yung immobility naman is resource immobility means that resources tend to be sticky and don't move easily from firm to firm. Because of stickiness, the resource differences that exist between firms are difficult to replicate and therefore can last for a long time. Kaya nga din kailangan natin ng patents, copyrights, and trademarks para hindi nila basta-basta nagagaya yung resources na ginagamit ng firm natin. Okay? So, meron din tayong VRIO framework. Ano ba yung VRIO framework? Which is related pa rin siya sa resources natin. So, a theoretical framework that explains and predicts a firm-level competitive advantage. So, a firm can gain a competitive advantage if it has resources that are valuable, rare, costly to imitate, and organize to capture the value of the resources. Okay? So, ito naman yung VRIO framework natin. So, we need to determine if our resources are valuable, rare, costly to imitate, organize. So, if yes lahat yung sagot natin dito, if it is valuable, rare, costly to imitate, organize, to capture value, then we have a sustainable competitive advantage. Okay? Pero, paano ba natin kasi masasabi kung ang value ang resource natin is valuable? So, a resource is valuable if it helps a firm increase the perceived value of its product or service in the eyes of consumers. So, it is either by adding attractive features or by lowering price because the resource helps the firm lower its cost. So, if the answer is yes, we will proceed to the next question. But if the answer is no, ibig sabihin our firm has competitive disadvantage. So, with respect to its rivals, medyo, nandun siya sa pinakamababa. Okay? So, the firm cannot compete with its rivals or competitors. So, ang gusto natin, of course, is valuable yung resource natin. So, if it is valuable, nakapasa siya dito sa first step, the next question is it rare? Kasi if not, may competitive parity tayo. If you can remember yung competitive parity, we are just performing like yung any with two or more na kasama natin dun sa industry na competitor. Okay? And if yes, we will proceed to the next question. Paano ba natin masasabi na yung resource natin is rare? So, our resource is rare only if only one or few firms possess the resource that we have or can perform the capability in the same unique way. So if the resource is common, it will result in perfect competition where no firm is able to maintain a competitive advantage. Kaya nga kapag hindi siya rare, nagkakaroon ng competitive parity. So we are just performing it at the same level. Wala nang differentiation na nangyayari dun sa product na na-produce natin because we are using the same resources. Okay? So, what we want is to have a rare resource. So, if we have a rare resource, then next question is it costly to imitate? Okay? So, kailan ba natin masasabi na costly to imitate siya? So, our resources or a resource is costly to imitate if firms that do not possess the resource are unable to develop or buy the resource at a reasonable price. Okay? So, syempre, if hindi naman costly yung resource natin, then we can have a temporary competitive advantage. So, temporary lang siya kasi once na nabili na siya nung rival mo or competitor mo, then you will lose your competitive advantage. Kasi makakapag-produce na din sila same level with you. Okay? So, we need to have a costly to imitate resources. So next, if we have costly to imitate resources, the next question is it organized to capture value? Okay, so when we say organized and captured yung resource natin, it must have in place an effective organizational structure and coordinating systems. Kasi if not, again, we have temporary competitive advantage because it may be adopted now or magagaya siya, imitated by your competitors later on. And if that happens, mawawala ulit yung competitive advantage natin. So, what we aim is we have valuable, rare, costly to imitate and organize resources in order to sustain our competitive advantage. Kasi once we fail, magkakaroon tayo ng competitive disadvantage compared to our rivalries. Kung dito pa lang sa rivals, so kung dito pa lang sa una, nag-fail na tayo, then expected na we have our competitive disadvantage. Okay? So, ito yung kailangan natin i-achieve in terms of our resources in order to sustain competitive advantage. Okay? So, next. Okay, so yun na yung mga kailangan nating sa alang-alang when we choose our resources. Okay? Kasi sabi natin kanina, resources reinforce core competencies. Okay? Now, let's take a look naman yung capabilities. Kasi sabi natin kanina, when we link yung core competencies natin with the resources and capabilities, yung capabilities allow managers to orchestrate their competencies. Okay? So, after deciding or discussing about the resources, characteristics of the resources that a firm must have in order to have a sustained competitive advantage, let's take a look at yung capabilities. Okay? So, meron tayong sinasabi na dynamic capabilities perspective. Okay? Okay? So, ano yung sinasabi nating dynamic capabilities perspective? So, dynamic capabilities describe a firm's ability to create, deploy, modify, reconfigure, upgrade, or leverage its resources in its quest for competitive advantage. Okay, so any fit between the firm's internal strengths and external environment must be dynamic. So, a firm must be able to change its resource base and activity system as the external environment changes. Okay? Siyempre, di ba, sabi nga natin is the only constant in this world is change. So, yung environment natin talaga yung nag-change. So, we need to adapt also with the changes in the environment. And dynamic capabilities are essential in order to gain and sustain, of course, competitive advantage. So, the firm may create, deploy, modify, reconfigure, or upgrade nga yung resources as to provide value to customers and or lower the cost in dynamic environment. Kasi nga, we want to achieve competitive advantage. So, let's take note that competitive advantage is not derived from static resource or market advantages, but from a dynamic reconfiguration of a firm's resource base. Okay? So, dynamic capabilities does not only allow the firm to adapt to the changing environment, but also it enables the firm to create market changes that can strengthen their strategic position. So, example is the iPhone, iPad, which made the competitors adjust in order to compete with the newly introduced products of Apple. Okay? So, syempre, nag-advance na ng technology from keypad to touchscreen. Tapos, yung specs din ng mga available products. So, we need to be dynamic in terms of responding to the changes in the environment and changes in the strategy of our competitors. Okay, so looking at the dynamic capabilities perspective, let's take a look at the resource stocks and resource flow. So, one way to think about developing such intangible resource is to distinguish, di ba sabi natin kanina, yung capabilities natin are intangible in nature. We need to distinguish yung difference between resource stocks and resource flows. So resource stocks are firms' current level of intangible resource, while resource flows are the firm's level. Hindi ko pala na-move. So, as I was saying, so we need to differentiate yung resource stocks from resource flows kasi it is one way of developing yung intangible resources natin. So, resource stocks, yun yung firm's current level of intangible resource, while resource flows are firm's level of investment to maintain or build a resource. Okay, yung difference nila is can be seen dito sa illustration na to. Okay? Mas maiintindihan nyo siya using this dynamic capabilities and the bathtub. So, parang, yung dynamic capabilities, kinompare niya doon sa bathtub na merong lamang tubig. Okay? So, the amount of water in the bathtub, so, eto siya, indicates a company's level of a specific intangible resource stock. So, eto siya. So, like for example, nandito yung dynamic capabilities, new product development, engineering expertise, innovation capability, reputation for quality, and so on. So, intangible resource stocks are built through investment over time. And then, ito yung mga investment natin, which is represented, yung investment natin in resources is represented by the faucets from which water flows into the tub. So, dito nakabase din yung level of intangible resource stock natin, kung gaano kadami yung investment natin in resources. So, the faucets indicate investments the firm can make in different intangible resources. So, kung gaano kabilis mapuno yung bathtub natin depends on yung flow of water from the faucets. So, it depends on our investment in our intangible resources. And also, depende din doon sa leak out of the tub. Kasi merong leak dito. If you can see, we have here leaks. So, yun yung outflows natin, leakage natin. So, the outflows represent a reduction in the firm's intangible resources stocks. So, kailan nagkakaroon ng leakage? So, resource leakage might occur through employee turnover. So, kapag may mga nagre-resign na, of course, yung mga nagagaling nating employees, nagre-resign. So, especially if key employees leave nga. So, di ba, sabi natin, kapag hindi napahalagahan yung employees natin, then there is a chance that we lose our good responsible employees. So, yun yung isang cause kung kapag nawawalan or nababawasan tayo ng intangible resource stock. Okay, so a reduction in resource stocks can occur if a firm does not engage in specific activity for some time and forgets how to do this activity well. So, yun yung iiwasan natin. So, we will not just focus on these faucets, on our investment to our resources to fill out the bathtub, but also we need to take a look at yung leakage. How to minimize yung outflows natin para hindi tayo mahirapan na mapuno or madagdagan yung intangible resource stocks natin. Okay? So, yun yung resources and capabilities. Paano natin i-detail yung resources and capabilities natin in order to achieve yung core competencies natin and later on, achieve and sustain competitive advantage to have superior performance in the industry compared to our competitors. So, how do we protect competitive advantage in order to sustain nga? So, several conditions can offer some protection to a successful firm by making it costly for competitors to imitate nga the resources or capabilities that underlie its competitive advantage. So we should have a better expectations of future resource value, because better expectations of future resource value is important kasi nga sometimes firms can acquire resources at a low cost, which lays the foundation for a competitive advantage later when expectations about the future of the resource turn out to be more accurate. Di ba sabi nga natin, if we have competitive advantage, we can produce products at a lower cost compared to yung competitors natin. Yung path dependence naman, yung sinasabi natin na path dependence, how can we protect competitive advantage through path dependence? So, path dependence describes a process in which the options one faces in a current situation are limited by decisions made in the past. Okay? So, often, early events, sometimes even random ones, have a significant effect on final outcomes. Okay, so sometimes we decide based on our previous experiences. So kapag maganda na yung naging resulta from previous experience, previous decisions, then we can adapt it for making future decisions. Okay. Example din dito na maganda is yung US English system. 'Di ba yung US English, yung US natin, ginagamit nila yung English system. So, like gallons, pounds, kapag lalabas sila ng products, yung measurement nila based on the English system of measurement. While yung the rest of the world, nag-stick tayo sa metric system. So, nagkakaroon din sila ng problema sa ibang construction. Kasi nga, iba yung ginagamit nila doon sa ginagamit nung the rest of the world. Okay, so next is causal ambiguity. So it describes a situation in which the cause and effect of a phenomenon are not readily apparent. Okay, so managers need to have some kind of understanding about causes for superior and inferior performance. So, understanding the underlying reasons of observed phenomena is far from trivial. So, it needs deep understanding and study. Okay? For example, yung apple, it is not clear if what is the real cause of the success ng apple natin. If it is visionary role ba of Steve Jobs, or the skills of its employees, or it is because of the COO or Chief Operating Officer. Kasi if the link between cause and effect is ambiguous for Apple's managers, it is much more difficult for others seeking to copy this valuable resource. Diba? So, hindi nila alam talaga what are the cause of your success. So, kapag hindi nila alam, hindi nila magagaya. Okay? So, mahihirapan silang gayahin or mahihirapan nilang abutin yung success na na-attain mo because they don't know the reason why did you come up with that product or why did you attain that success. Next is social complexity. It describes naman the situations in which different social and business systems interact with one another. So there is frequently no causal ambiguity as to how the individual systems such as supply chain management or new product development work in isolation. Social complexity emerges when two or more such systems are combined. So, copying the emerging complex social system is difficult for competitors because neither direct imitation nor substitution is a valid approach. So, we need to maintain yung social complexity din. So, example, a group of 3 people has different relationship connecting one person to another. So, adding another person will increase the relationship among the group. So this is also true to systems with different parts or activities. So which makes the resources and capabilities costly to imitate. Okay? So, yun yung ano natin for the internal analysis. How do we use or how to maintain, choose our resources and capabilities in order to attain core competencies, then later on competitive advantage and superior performance. Okay, so yon. Now let's move to the internal factor evaluation matrix. So etong IFE, madali na lang siya, i-go over na lang natin siya kasi same lang naman yung process dun sa EFE matrix natin. The only difference is the factors being used in the IFE. Okay? So, internal factor evaluation matrix is a strategic management tool for auditing, evaluating major strengths and weaknesses in the functional areas of a business. Okay, so IFE matrix also provides basis for identifying and evaluating relationships among those yung areas ng strength and weaknesses natin. Okay, so paano ba siya ginagawa? So, if you can see, halos parehas lang sila nung EFE. Yun, first is to identify the key internal factors. So, yung difference lang, in this case na internal factors, na-discuss na natin kanina, kung ano yung mga internal factors that affects yung firm natin. So, andyan yung mga resources natin, ano pa yung capabilities natin, what else, yung core competencies, yung firm activities natin, strategy natin, yun yung mga internal factors na pwede nating i-consider in developing IFE matrix. But make sure that we need to divide it into groups ulit, strength and weaknesses. Okay? And then okay, so we can consider factors 10 to 20 internal factors, but the number of factors has no effect on the range of total weighted scores. Kasi, yung sabi nga dito, sa number 2 natin, we assign yung weight natin from 0 to 1, pero regardless kung gaano kadami yung factor natin, it should be equal to 1 lagi, yung weight natin. Ginawa na natin siya sa EFE matrix. Okay, so next is assign a 1 to 4 rating again doon sa mga key factor natin. So, kapag yung major weakness natin, nire-rate natin siya as 1. If minor weakness, rated by 2. Minor strength, 3. And then major strength is 4. So, then multiply each factor's weight by its rating to determine a weighted score and again, sum the weighted scores. Okay. So, ito yung example natin. So, yung weight dito, ang ginamit niya is percent. Diba sabi ko nung previous lecture, we can use yung percentage or yung decimal point. Pero, sabi ko, ang gamitin na lang natin is decimal point para magkaroon tayo ng basic na, I mean, pare-paras na tayo ng gagamitin. Okay? Yun na yung gagamitin natin. Pero same lang naman. So here, meron internal strength and internal weaknesses. So naglagay siya ng weight. So 10, 12, and so on, which is equal to 100% or 1 kapag ginamit natin, hindi tayo nag-percentage basis. So, Di ba sabi natin, kapag one or near one yung binigay natin na weight, ibig sabihin, very important siya in for the firm in order to achieve competitive advantage. So, yung largest manufacturer in the market na given siya ng 10%, okay, or 0.1, and then yung supplies major airlines 12%. Ito yung mga malalaki dito sa strength niya, given yung weight, and also they are given 4. So, ibig sabihin, they are the major strength ng firm natin. And then for the internal weakness naman, yung saturated market and sensitive to oil prices, yung given yung highest weight. So, ibig sabihin, very important siya in achieving competitive advantage. However, nakalagay dito sa saturated market, rating niya is 1, which means major weakness siya ng firm. And ito, minor weakness siya. Okay? And then, of course, minultiply niya to get the weighted score, but yung final or total weighted score natin gave us 2.79. So, which means, di ba, ang average score natin is 2.5. Nasabi ko ata dun sa previous na 2, 2.5. 2.5 yung average score natin. So, 2.79 is above average. Okay? So, okay na siya. Okay na yung firm natin because it is already about or above average. Kasi if their total weighted scores are below 2.5, so ibig sabihin, weak yung business natin internally in terms of IFE. Pero score significantly above 2.5 indicate a strong internal position. So, if higher than 2.5 yung total weighted score natin, then higher yung possibility or chances that we attain superior performance in the industry with respect to our rivals. Okay? So, let's take note that when a key internal factor is both a strength and weakness, pwede natin siyang ilagay twice dito. So, lalagay mo siya internal strength and then internal weakness. Then, dito sa IFE matrix. Then, the same factor is treated as two independent factors in this case. So, we can also assign weight and a rating to both na magkaiba. Okay? So, yun yung IFE matrix natin. Same procedure as the EFE matrix, pero different yung factors na kino-consider because we are now considering the internal factors. But the assignment of weight, same pa din. If it is very important for the firm, it is given a weight near 1. And then if it is not that important to the firm to achieve competitive advantage, then it is given a weight near 0. But we need to have a total weight of 1. Okay? And for with respect to the rating, we can rate them the factors from 1 to 4. 1 major weakness, 2 minor weakness, 3 minor strength, 4 major strength, and then we multiply the weight by the rating to come up with the weighted score, and we need to total it up. And then we can now interpret yung performance of the firm based on the total weighted score. And bear in mind that the average total weighted score is 2.5. So if you have greater than 2.5 total weighted average, then it is good enough na for the firm. Okay? So, that's all for this recorded video. Please, again, be ready for an online quiz on Thursday. Thank you for listening.